Okay, so my name's Justen Garrity. I own a company called Veteran Compost. I'll just talk a little bit about like my military background, how I got into this, which is usually like a frequent question, and then talk a little bit about the company and some of the hard lessons learned that maybe you could avoid or learn from me. So I grew up around here in Maryland. I went to college at WPI. I heard people talking about RPI, so a nice little Division III obscure Northeastern school rivalry here, so that's good, you know. So I went to school in Worcester and did ROTC. I graduated college day, I came in the Army as a second lieutenant. So I did 5 years on active duty as a combat engineer officer, you know, got to see the world and do all that fun stuff. And after 5 years, you know, was kind of ready to change over. So I went to the National Guard for another 5. So I did 10 years altogether in the Army. When I left active duty, it was in 2009. Pretty bad timing, job-wise. I was in Mosul and left there in December of 2008. April 2009, I left active duty and was on unemployment. So like 4 months after I got a Bronze Star, I have an unemployment card in my hand. And it was like, it was humiliating. I have it, I keep it in my office. It's like horrible, right? That I applied for, big shout out to Bank of America. I applied to be like a branch manager, assistant manager, teller, part-time teller, and security guard. And I didn't get a call back on any of those jobs. So the way that jobs work nowadays is it's all computerized and robots. And so when you put in combat engineer officer, well, that doesn't have the word marketing in it, so you're never going to get hired for the marketing job. You're never going to even get the interview. You know, what I decided is, you know what, this sucks, it's humiliating, and if other people don't think I have value, I know I have value, so I'm going to do something about it. So I started to look around at what was out there. So I was single all through my Army days, and I was overseas for most of it, and the rest of it I was in Missouri, so I didn't really spend a lot of money. So I had saved up what I had for my pay. So I had the money in my pocket, and I said, what can I do with this to start a business? And so I'm not a super hippie person. I drive an F-150, I eat steak. It is what it is. But I think sustainability is a real thing, and I think it's something that's here, and it's only going to grow further. And there are far out things there in sustainability that I don't know that all that hippie stuff is going to happen, but there are things that are very real with renewable energy, with sustainable materials, things like that I think are very compelling. And so I started to look at renewable energy and wind energy and solar energy, but there's a lot of dependence on tax credits and government programs. And so the state of things in the country, there's a lot of gridlock, and that's a hard thing to depend on. So I said that's a little too risky. So I started to look at just recycling, scrap metal. A lot of people are doing that, kind of already done. I looked at recycling electronics. It's a very small piece of the pie. And then I looked at the big pie that is materials in the country, what's going to the landfill. And 60% of what's in every trash truck in America is compostable. So every trash truck that drives by on the road, 2/3 of what's in the back of that truck could be composted. So it's food waste, it's wood waste, it's yard waste, it's paper waste that could be used to make something, and instead we bury it or we burn it. So like I said, I'm not a big sustainability guy, but it's going to be really hard to talk to our grandkids in like 50 years and explain why we thought digging a hole in the ground and burying our shit and covering it and walking away was like a good idea. So I went and saw how other people were doing it. I read as much as I could. I decided to go back to school to kind of get some business skills. So I used my GI Bill to go back to school at Penn State. I went at night school, and while I was doing that, kind of come up with like a business plan. So as all that kind of came together, I was lucky and I found a place to rent. So when I was looking for land, I did all the traditional things. I reached out to real estate agents. I reached out to economic development people in different counties, and I said, I'm looking to rent land. And this is back in 2009, 2010, when the real estate market was sunk. So you would think people would want to rent to me, and no one would return my calls. No one would return my emails. And I get it. Like, I have no business experience. I've never composted before, and I have just the money in my pocket. Like, I'm gonna take in tons of material every day, and I promise I won't make a mess. Like, I get why people maybe weren't super stoked to rent to me, but it was insane that I couldn't find a spot. And the way it ended up happening is Craigslist. So Craigslist is awesome. Shout out to all my Craigslist people, the not shady ones. And you know, the not shady part of Craigslist is great. And I found a farm that was for lease, new to me, but I signed the lease. And when I signed the lease, I had no customers lined up. I just had this like business plan that seemed pretty good, and everyone told me it was a good idea. And then I just got started. And what happened is I signed that lease in July of 2010. Between July and December 31st, I made $350. It was not $350 in profit. That is, I made $350 in total revenue. So that is like thousands of dollars in rent. I'm buying all this equipment. I'm like working for myself, trying to figure it all out. And I have $350 that I made the whole damn year. I finally got a phone call, and it was from a restaurant that was composting with another service, and they said the guys are not reliable and we want to switch. So I was like, this is great. And I agreed to meet them later that week. Well, later that week it was snowing. And I show up when I'm supposed to show up, and they were like, we didn't think you were going to come because it was snowing. And I told them I thought the whole problem was that people don't show up when they're supposed to for you. I was like, if I can show up on time on the battlefield, I can show up here to pick up your food waste from your restaurant. And they signed up on the spot. And that was my first customer. But I realized that I didn't have a truck to pick the stuff up, the food waste from the restaurant. So I went back to Craigslist and I bought a trailer for $455. And I put that trailer on the back of my Chevy Trailblazer, and I dragged around this trailer, and I would pick up bins of food waste in the middle of the night. And then a couple months later, a hospital put out a bid to lots of different companies to be their service provider for food scrap collection. And I went to this bid meeting. It's the first time I'd ever seen a Keurig machine. Like I didn't even know how to use it. It was very embarrassing, like looking back, that I'm like fumbling with the coffee maker in the reception area. And I go and I meet with them and I talk with them. And at the end of the meeting, they announced to everyone in the room, like, we're gonna go with that guy, and they point at me, and I was like more surprised than anybody, which I'm sure the hospital, if you were in the hospital, you'd probably think twice, like, why is that guy surprised? So that was my second customer. They were Greater Baltimore Medical Center, a 400-bed hospital in Baltimore, and that was like more street cred. So once I had those, then that started to roll in, and when people ask, hey, who are you working with, I can point to other people. And so from there it started to roll. We signed up our third customer, our fourth customer, and then we started rolling. So people pay us to pick up their food scraps, and we do residential and commercial customers. So you may be a homeowner here in Bethesda with a little 7-gallon bin in your house. We do offices, we do restaurants, we do everything from people's homes to the Ravens Stadium in Baltimore and everything in between. So little bins, dumpsters, if you have food scraps, we're gonna collect it if you like. All those food scraps go to our facilities. So that first farm that I rented in Aberdeen, that's actually, at one point, the day I started that farm and I got my permit to be a compost facility, I got what was then the third permit in the state. So the day I opened, I was the bronze medal winner, which was awesome. And then my two competitors went out of business for permit violations. So for most of the last 7 years, I've been the only person with a permit to do what we do in Maryland. And so it's a very small monopoly to control here in the state. But what happens is all the food scraps that we collect with our trucks go back to our facility either in Aberdeen or our other facility that we have now in Virginia, and we dump out all the material. We have guys that go and wash the bins, and then all the food scraps that we dump out, we mix with wood chips. And we take that mixture and we put it in a pile, and every 10 feet in the pile we insert a pipe. So a 4-inch HDPE pipe into the pile, and we hook it up to electric blowers and timers. And then 3 months after it came in the door as a hamburger or a carrot, it's going back out the door to a farm or a garden or someone's backyard. So that's and we get paid on both ends. So if you're looking at cash flow diagrams, this is a pretty sweet one. We're getting paid for one of our 2 raw ingredients, and then we're getting paid for what leaves the place. So I started it as me. It's a one-man show. I hired one guy, and then now that's grown to, we have 15 people on the payroll every day. We have 10 trucks on scheduled routes in DC, Maryland, Virginia.